not bad at getting stronger. You are just trying to do it like a man. You are trying to get stronger the same way that men do, which is by pushing heavier weights, grinding through exhaustion, the, hustle mentality, forcing yourself to add more sets, more reps every single week, and you are fighting against your own biology, your own psychology, and your own natural energy. And this is why your traditional super masculine training frameworks and mindset frameworks are not working for you. It's why you're hitting burnout. It's why you're plateauing every couple of blocks. It's why you're starting to question if you are even cut out for the sport of powerlifting. Because strength is not just about moving more weight. It's about how your energy, your mindset, and your body respond together. This is the powerhouse framework. And if you are like most women, that approach isn't just frustrating. It literally erodes your confidence. It burns you out and it keeps you, like I said, it keeps you plateaued. Even when your estimated 1 rep maxes say different, even when on paper, on your program, your numbers should be moving. And it's why so many women in strength training, in powerlifting, end up outsourcing their confidence, outsourcing their belief, leaning on validation from their coach, from their training partners, their romantic partners, their family, social media, to feel like they are doing enough. But if you want to actually start training from a place of ease where strength feels like a natural extension of who you are, so that you get to stop fighting and forcing your strength to happen so hard that you end up losing yourself in the process, this video is for you. And by the end of this episode, you're going to see exactly why the old push, the old grind, the old force it approach isn't working, and how you can actually start training in a way that lets your strength show up naturally, without the burnout, without the doubt, without the frustration and the constant hesitation, the constant overthinking and outsourcing. Now, I want to be really honest for a second, because most women, and this is not your fault, it's the way we are trained, the way we are inherently made to believe about strength training, about the gym in general, to be honest with you, and that is that progress equals doing more. Whether that is in your powerlifting training, more squats, more deadlifts, more accessory work in order to get stronger. Extra, if we think about fat loss as an example, right? Extra cardio to burn the calories. Move more, consume less, right? Or every session, if you want to grow muscle, push to failure. We can literally see this in every single style of training that we've come across. And yes, sometimes it works, but only for a while. Because over time, that approach starts to backfire, because we will notice this in little ways, that you are constantly sore, you are constantly exhausted, you are not recovering properly, you feel like you are having to drag yourself into every single session and forcing yourself through that exhaustion. Your confidence in the gym, in your training under certain loads starts to wobble, even though, like I said, on paper, your estimated 1 rep maxes, your coach's feedback says that you should be going up. And deep down, that is what you should be doing, because you know that it's absolutely fucking possible for you, and it's so frustrating because of that gap, because you know what you are capable of, but because of the way you are training, it's constantly getting capped. It is the self-imposed glass ceiling, and you find yourself looking for validation from your coach, social media, other things, and outsourcing it instead of trusting yourself. And the truth is that training that is all about the force, all about the hustle, the grind will only get you so far, and then it hits a wall. And it's why I see so many women hitting burnout, hitting plateaus, starting to question whether or not this is made for them. And it is not because you are weak. It is not because you're not cut out for it. It is not because you're, not made to do it, that it's not possible for you. You are not lazy. You are not capable. It's because your training framework and your mindset need to be operating in a completely different energy. It's not about doing more. It's about training in a way that aligns how women actually progress. It's where strength starts flowing from a place of ease, of confidence, of calm, of natural flow, rather than brute force, masculine force. And when you are doing it this way, you're fighting against your own body, because women's nervous systems and recovery patterns often respond better to precision and alignment than constant force. And we know we cannot outgrind biology. We cannot out-hustle your nervous system, because you will reach a ceiling. And I know that you have felt this, and I know how frustrating it feels to keep circling the drain. Maybe you've had constant injuries, or you'll keep battling injuries, burnout, stalled progress, and forcing strength in this way, therefore, does not make you strong, or it certainly does not unlock the numbers, the plates that you are capable of. It just makes you tired. So like I said, force works for short-term results, but long-term, for sustainable strength, it becomes a trap. And this is why, because women progress when we feel capable, when we feel confident, when we feel connected in our training. When you trust your technique, when you trust your programming, hell, when you trust your coach, your feedback, when you know that you can hit your numbers without feeling the need to prove it on every single set, when your training matches your energy levels, when it matches your lifestyle, and you feel like, this is it, this is where I was meant to be, this is what I was meant to be doing. And so we progress when we feel aligned, supported, energized, not when we are constantly pushing against ourselves. And like I said, when we train with this masculine grind energy, with the more weights, the more sets, the more sessions, the more load, we disconnect from all three of those things. And our self-belief starts to erode, our motivation starts to drop, our strength stops coming. And it's why that outdated framework does not work for most female lifters, because your strength is not just a number on the bar. It's literally a reflection of our almost entire training ecosystem. And if you are new to my world, this is what I focus so heavily on, not just the strength and the protocols, the structural, strategic things. Of course, that's a part of it when it comes to strength, and we will get onto this shortly, but looking at you as the lifter, the mindset, the recovery, the energy levels, the identity work outside of the gym and outside of your training as well. Because when we are forcing it, we are disconnecting from our natural strengths. We lose confidence, we question ourselves, we rely on external validation instead of self-trust. And I want to be really honest with you about the almost the human cost of pushing too hard in this way. Now, back in May of 2024, I hit a wall in my training. I was really deep into a prep, and my primary bench, squat and deadlift days were all back to back. And of course in prep, the way that I used to train was to really push those top sets as hard as possible. And I would lift pretty much what we wanted to lift on like second to third attempts in my peak weeks. Just have the taper to recover and then go into comp. Now, this wasn't a bad way to train by any means, because I got really good results. And on paper, in that way, it looks great. I was hitting new PBs a lot. Everything was moving up. My total was building very fucking fast. But the reality of it was that I was exhausted. I was overwhelmed, and I think I was slowly unraveling. Because I would come home from the gym, particularly on my deadlift days, post squat and bench day, and I would feel physically drained and so like emotionally raw. And I would just sit there crying. I remember recording a story after my last peak deadlift session, and it was incredible. I will tell you this in a second, but I'd added an insane amount to my deadlift in like a matter of months. And rather than coming home and feeling elated at what I just achieved, I couldn't stop crying. And I remember recording this story and being like, listen, I know that this is what I should be feeling, but I feel like I'm coming apart because I can tell that my CNS and my body is just, it's fucking fried. My nervous system was screaming at me. It's like my mind wouldn't switch off. And it started to get to the point, by the way, where even my sleep was impacted because I literally could not turn off. And sleep was something I knew I desperately needed, of course, for my recovery, but even that became kind of impossible. And I just felt like I was so switched on, I was so tense all of the time, and my body kind of started to refuse to let me rest. And it was like I was alive and simultaneously exhausted at the same time. And I kind of felt like I couldn't just catch a moment to just like to just be Beth, to actually fucking chill and breathe. And the thing is that prep itself ended really well. Like, I had probably one of my best competition outcomes to date in terms of the rate of progress, the numbers that I hit, how happy I was with the performance. It's what got me to nationals. That was the day that I hit my qualifying total, and that sent me through to, you know, British Championships. But the process left me questioning a lot about myself. And ultimately that, I think, was probably the trigger point to me spiraling. If you watched my last video, you would have heard me talk about this, and it's kind of what ended up making me lose a lot of that self-belief. I loved the sport, of course, I continued loving training, but at that point it started to set me up, you know, to almost have to prove stuff. And I felt like I'd hit a brick wall that no matter how much I tried, I couldn't push any further, or I wouldn't be able to push any further, because what then happened is something worse, where before my body even had a chance to revolt, my brain started to fight back. So I had jumped from a 142.5 kilo deadlift in the November of 2023, and by March of 2024, I think roughly, it was about a 4 or 5 month period, I jumped to 157.5. So literally about 4 months, and it's like my brain knew what that meant for me. It meant that now there were expectations, that now I was going to have to keep pushing, keep leveling up, keep risk falling behind, right? That now that you set this as the standard, either in the loads that I was hitting, the rate of progression, who I was being, how fast I was progressing, everything meant that now more was expected of me. Even if that wasn't actually the case, that's how it was perceived to my subconscious. And all of a sudden I started sabotaging myself without realizing it. Like, I remember just implementing these tiny little tweaks to my deadlift technique without it actually being set by my coach. I started overthinking every single session. I started questioning myself constantly. And what should have been insane momentum, I remember my coach being like, you were on for like a 170 pull at Nats, like 5 months later. And to this day, so a year and a half later, I have not progressed in my deadlift at all. I haven't even hit that number again, because for a year and a half, it's completely stalled. And it's only now that I'm starting to get to a point where I feel that I can display that strength again. And it is so much less to do with what I've been actually doing in the gym. Of course, like I said, there has been some strategic changes to my program, to what we've been focusing on, to my actual deadlift technique, but there has been so much more that's gone on in my mindset, in how I perceive myself, because this is not just about lifting weights like too hard and pushing yourself too hard, but when you force things, when you push, you're training yourself so relentlessly that it starts to become a grind, that it starts to ironically become the fact that, what for me, at the very least, I can say for me that the more I progressed physically, the more my brain started to fight me. Because, like I said, I started to doubt my technique. I self-sabotaged. I could not settle down, because what starts to happen is that it spirals into your identity, into who you see yourself as the lifter you actually are. And I started to question the lifter that I was and how far I could really take it without it becoming a burden. Because what started to happen is that I started to equate progress with burnout. The same way that I have felt previously in my business, that growing my business, that more success equals burnout, equals hustle and pushing myself harder. And so there becomes resistance to actually being able to grow. And it starts to, touch on your self-belief a little bit, the way that you see yourself as a lifter, the confidence you bring to the bar, to the gym, and suddenly your strength feels like a burden. And it's not anymore an expression who you are, of who you are. You stop enjoying it, you start fighting it, and every single session starts to feel like a test, and it starts to feel this thing that you compare to, of like whether or not you are failing, as opposed to an opportunity to grow. And the thing is that what happened to me doesn't just happen to me. I see it with so many women, both in the sport of powerlifting, in strength training in general. I see it with my clients, where you push, you grind, you follow the programs that probably aren't really meant for you, that are built for someone else based on an outdated framework, and it ends up being built for someone else's body, someone else's nervous system, and your mindset, and everything starts to burn out. You hit plateaus, you start questioning yourself, and it does not have to be that way. Because the truth is that women do not progress, do not in that way get stronger the way that men do. Because your nervous system, your hormonal rhythm, the way that your confidence fluctuates under stress is all different. And when you try to force strength through the hustle, through the grind, through the masculine way, the way that men have been taught to, you are fighting your own biology and psychology at the same time, and you are basically swimming upstream. It is like pushing a fucking boulder up a mountain. And what is most important about this is that it's no longer just about numbers on a bar, especially in powerlifting. We are so numbers oriented, but when you tap into this, it's like you start tapping into how you feel every single day, how you show up in your training, how you start to trust your body, how you trust the process, the coach, the feedback, how you carry that confidence, and how that starts to spill out into every area of your life. Because when strength stops being a struggle, something that you have to force, and it starts being a natural extension of who you are, everything fucking changes. Your energy, your focus, your confidence, your consistency, your motivation, therefore your results, therefore your total, therefore the numbers. So flipping it from numbers focused and push and hustle to actually allowing yourself to fully express who you are naturally brings those things about, but in a totally fucking different way. And this is why I so believe that this work is so important. This is why understanding this shift is not, in my opinion, just an optional mindset tweak, a fancy lifting hack. Like, this is not what this video is. This is the difference between stagnating, between burning out and fucking thriving, between feeling like you are fighting the sport, fighting your training, the thing that you wanted to do in the first place, and suddenly feeling like you are moving and flowing with it, and everything gets to be so easy. And listen, I know there are going to be people watching this, maybe wanting to comment thinking that, well, my program is personalized. My coach has literally written this for me. I follow a bespoke plan. I do train hard. I'm not doing anything wrong. And my love, you're so right. You are right. You do need to train hard. You do need progressive overload. And this is why I said this is not like, woo. This is strategic, but this is a new lens. And I know this is a new lens for you. You do need specificity to grow. You do need all of the things that we are taught. Listen, to a certain extent. But the difference is, this is not about less effort or less intelligent programming. It is about how that effort is applied to you as a whole person. Like I said before, you as the lifter, rather than just the lift or the lifting, not just a number on the bar, right? Because the thing is that even the most perfectly strategically designed programs can backfire if the way that you are applying it does not match you as a person, your nervous system, your recovery capacity, or your psychology. Because when you are in the push, hustle, grind mindset, mentality, the constant forcing, the chasing, the overexerting, the overextending yourself, it is so easy to burn out. It is so easy to hit stagnation, self-doubt, for your self-belief to completely slip. And it does not mean that you are weak. It's that the way the program, the program doesn't necessarily have to be wrong. It doesn't mean that. It simply means that your framework, like the full fucking picture, the energy, the mindset, the way you integrate your training with your life, with your recovery, with your brain, needs to match how your body and your mind actually respond, right? And when you start doing this, I cannot express it enough. It gets to feel so easy. Not even just effortless, because we want to be putting effort in. And I know that feeling feels so fucking amazing, but aligned. Not forced, but like fully expressed through you, your body, your mindset, right? And this is the comparison I see. I have spent a lot of time studying high-level lifters, looking at their mindset, looking at how they train, how they talk about their training. And there are two different ways that I see lifters operating. Two different energies, mindsets, capacities. And one is force. The other is magnetism. And I've taken this and I wanted to apply this in terms of the masculine, feminine comparison, right? Because when we train from force, the push, the grind, the grrr, I have to do this no matter what, we are forcing progress. We are forcing lifts, we are forcing ourselves to show up in a mindset, in a framework that is often not sustainable. And like I said, yes, this works for a while because there is scientific background to it, of course, but force has a ceiling. And at some point, your body starts to push back. And the longer that you do it, the more your body, your nervous system, your mind starts sending you these warnings, like we spoke through at the start of this episode, right? Fatigue, burnout, stagnation, restless sleep, self-doubt, all of those things. You are exhausted, you are not recovering, your self-belief starts to crumble because you are working harder than ever and still not getting stronger. And especially as women, this approach, it disconnects us from the very thing that makes us feel powerful. And that is our confidence, that is our self-belief, that is our determination. But magnetism, on the other hand, is different. It is about drawing strength out of yourself, not trying to force it on, right? It's the feminine psychology of training. It's alignment, it's identity, it's intention, and it's coming back to those things that actually allow us to progress. And that's when we feel confident. It's when we feel aligned and when we feel so fucking good. This is not some like woo-woo, visualize your stronger self and it will just magically happen. But magnetism is strategy, it's recovery, it's creating an environment, a mindset where strength naturally shows up because of who you are and therefore how you train, right? We're not skipping that step. Of course, the training is the crucial part, but it completely shifts how you show up in that and how you view it, because force says, I have to push harder to get stronger, but magnetism says, I create the conditions for my strength to naturally show up. And it's where strategy meets psychology. It's where you work with your biology instead of against it. It's where you prioritize alignment over the grind, intention over hustle. And of course, as I say, there is still hard work. Of course, there is programming. Of course, there is structure that has to be involved. But the difference is that it's not draining you. It's not depleting you and eroding you of your self-belief. It's not this constant battle to prove yourself. And I want you to think of it this way, that when you push and when you force, the bar starts to resist, right? Your body starts to resist, your confidence wavers. But when you show up magnetically with the presence, with the alignment, with the intention, like we said, the same movements, the same sessions, the same effort level suddenly have more flow. They suddenly have more efficiency and they suddenly have better results over time. Think of it this way, that like your force is pushing a heavy door open with every ounce of your energy, and magnetism is like finding the door that just swings open effortlessly because you are in the right position at the right moment with the right leverage, right? And like I said, women respond differently in this way. That the traditional masculine training emphasizes force, more sets, more weights, more grind, right? And while that works for us, we've seen this, it leads to burnout faster. And so this is why understanding that distinction is so key, because it is the difference between constantly chasing progress that you can barely hold on to, that becomes short-lived and therefore becomes so frustrating, and therefore we end up using it as a mirror to hold up to ourselves and say, this is why, because it's me, it's a problem with me, when it's not. It's how you're training and how you're viewing training. Instead of building a version of yourself that naturally expresses strength through resilience and confidence in her training. And this is literally, like I said, the feminine psychology of strength, because what I do not see people talking about enough is that when we push blindly, it does not just break our body down. It chips away at our confidence and our mindset, our psychology, our identity, our sense of control. And for women, I think this is even more amplified because our nervous system often responds differently to stresses, to intensity, to recovery demands. And this happens in a few different ways. So the constant push triggers self-doubt, or it can trigger self-doubt, right? When you are always forcing your lifts, your mind will literally start to question, well, fucking hell, am I doing enough? Like, am I actually strong enough to do this? Do I deserve this progress? But it's like we're waiting for the other shoe to drop because it feels like it's a fluke, right? And even though your body is capable, your brain starts creating obstacles. The same way that this happened for me with my deadlift. Like, this is why women, or so many women, do plateau, not because of physical limits, but because of mental limits. And this can spiral into identity friction. And again, like I shared with me, Strength it is a part of who you are, but when training starts to feel like a fight, you feel like you are the fight. And you start to question your identity as someone who is strong, who is capable, who is a motherfucking powerhouse, because every session starts to feel like proof that you are not enough, rather than a step towards showing that you are, right? But magnetism restores that alignment, it restores the confidence, because when you train in alignment with your energy, recovery, your nervous system, you are not just lifting weights, you are embodying your strength. And so progress, it feels like a natural reflection of your capability, a natural extension of who you are. It is not a struggle to convince yourself that you are worthy. Your lifts, your confidence, everything about you, your identity start to reinforce each other. It's this self-perpetuating cycle in the best possible fucking way, right? And it's a way for you to reclaim your autonomy. Because when you stop forcing, you stop reacting to the shoulds, the pressures of programming of society, of comparison, of social media. You start moving in a way that is authentically yours. And it builds not only physical strength, but it's such deeply rooted stuff. It's self-assuredness, it's that self-belief, because you know that you can create progress without sacrificing yourself. And I actually want to give you a really interesting example, and that is Bobby Butters. She is a powerlifter for Great Britain who recently competed at the World Games, and her coach recently shared a post about her progress going into it, because they actually made some very strategic changes to her training protocol. Now, he's very interesting, and I think is more of what I would probably refer to as like an old school powerlifting coach. Very, very smart, obviously very, very good at what he does, and the post ended up being about velocity type, like styles of training. And he basically in this post shared how they actually dropped the number of training sessions going into the World Games down to just 3 days a week. They stripped everything back, fewer sessions, less forced volume, but basically smarter and more aligned work. And like I said, he was talking about this in the context of velocity-based training. And I was listening to it and I was like, this is literally like the feminine psychology of training, right? Because what ended up happening for her is that she hit 5 personal bests in that competition, like fucking flew. He was like, we had such an incredible day. But the takeaway in both aspects is that she is doing less and achieving more, right? In the way that she trained, and making that adjustment, it allowed her strength to show up naturally. It allowed her to have a fucking phenomenal, really consistent day without burnout. And I'm sure that she had such a sick time for it. And I've seen the same happen in my training, right? Like I shared with my progress, my body and my brain were sending me the same message that I was burning out. And it wasn't just physical fatigue, it was mental, it was affecting my identity, my self-belief, my confidence, right? This is why force-based training eventually hits a ceiling. Because we can't outpush our body, we can't outpush our nervous system. And exactly like Bobby's coach was sharing, at what point does it end when we just focus on progress through the lens of push, hustle, masculine? What you're going to be training 7 days a week? You're just going to have like 6 top sets? At what point does it end? And it was such a good story, and it was literally the example that I really wanted to bring to today's episode, because when we make that shift, when we lean into magnetism, which is exactly in his own way what Bobby's coach, it's just the way that I perceive it, what Bobby's coach did, we start to train in a way that aligns and is in alignment with your energy, your recovery, your self. Because when we stop forcing, we start aligning, several things happen. And that is that first, your strength becomes an extension of who you are, like I said, rather than a fight against yourself. Your burnout stops dictating your progress. You start training hard and being able to recover. And your self-belief and your confidence start to be strengthened. It's not eroded anymore, but your results are in alignment with how you show up in your life, not just in the gym, right? And this approach works. It works for everyone, but it is the most important for women, for female lifters, because our bodies and our minds do not respond to the more is better mentality. Training hard, of course, is always going to be a part of the equation, but training smart, I know it's the cringe saying, but training smarter, not harder, but in alignment with your nervous system and your energy is what's going to allow us to thrive long term. And I know that you know the feeling of hitting that PB, right? And it's so fucking exhilarating. But I know that you also know the feeling where it becomes so exhausting in a way that leaves you feeling like you have given up everything and then some just to hit that number. And like I said, this was where I was at with my deadlifts, and that jump in 4 months was huge progress. It was like 15 kilos on my deadlift alone. But my brain started to interpret this, and it started to know that with that level of growth, I would have to constantly be leveling up. And without realizing it, I then started to self-sabotage. I was tweaking my deadlift, and I caused a huge stall, like a year and a half to not add anything to my deadlift. Like, that just goes to show that it is not about physical burnout alone. It's an identity burnout at that point. And this is where the strong lifter that you know yourself to be starts to fracture under the weight of that pressure, of that constant forcing, of the doing more, the misalignment, the masculine energy. And you start asking, if you're cut out for it, why the fuck am I stuck? Like, everything on paper says it. Why can't I express the strength that I know is there? And this is the shift, okay? So I want to walk you through this, because the first thing that we have to do to start training in this way is to acknowledge the push, right? We have to acknowledge that strength requires force. My camera just died and I've just had to restart filming, and apparently my mic was not on that whole time. So muscle growth, neuroadaptation require progressive overload. That's simply a fact, and we are not ignoring that in this approach. But to get stronger, we know we can't stay in our comfort zone. We have to push past limits, but pushing is not about grinding mindlessly, right? It's intentional, so that every set, every rep is a constant a conscious adaptation with the follow through of getting you stronger. It's a conscious application of force. And so you focus your energy where it matters. You are focusing on specific adaptations, putting your effort towards that, not just going through the motions, right? But when we add this layer of the feminine psychology, we start to see that the force is your power, right? That it's channeled. It's not chaotic. It's very intentional, like I said. And we can almost think of it as this like a dance a little bit, right? Like that you can be explosive, you can be assertive, you can be aggressive, but also be fully in control at that same time, right? And you are not just in training, therefore, just moving weight. You are expressing your strength with clarity, with purpose. You are not losing control or connection to your body or your strength or yourself by doing it. And this is the difference, right? And we can think of this as an example, like on a heavy squat day, right? Instead of just like grinding the bar up, we are instead being intentional with cueing your position, driving through your feet, connecting to the floor, being intentional with your brace, force applied with precision instead of panic, instead of, grinding and grr, And so we do need to push to a certain extent, of course, but there is a big difference between pushing blindly and aligning your effort with your energy. And this is the force versus the magnetism, right? The force is the grind, the hustle, the effort that gets muscle to grow, but the magnetism is the pull. It is the alignment that allows strength to flow naturally, rather than, from who you are, rather than who you think that you should be in order to get the results. And when you combine the two, you aren't just stronger, you are powerful in a way that feels like, as cringe as it might sound, like you are born to lift that weight because it's who you are. Because you are no longer one extreme of pushing to the point of burnout and completely disconnecting. You are actually embracing who you want to be, and therefore everything just clicks, it just comes together. Now, the second thing here is the energy awareness, and this comes from nervous system regulation. So we know that strength is not just about muscles. Having bigger muscles helps, but we want to make sure that we get the force transfer, right? It's about your brain, therefore, and your nervous system, that we can't just summon high-level lifts if your central nervous system, your CNS, is fucked, if it's fried, right? This means we have to be strategic with our rest, with our recovery, and making small tweaks to things like our training volume and our intensity are not just, soft choices. It's not something that you've done wrong and it's like a slap on the wrist by being capped. It's that they're literally power multipliers. And when, again, we add in this layer of the feminine psychology, this is literally embodiment in action, right? When you start to actually tune into your body,
when we actually allow us, our nervous system to settle, to rest, we move with so much more awareness. And then when we get under the bar, your lifts are not only going to move better and feel stronger, you also feel so much more connected. If you ever had those squats where you're like, oh my God, that was beautiful, I've literally never done a better squat. This is when your CNS is fully like fired up and feeling good. Your lifts feel so fluid, they feel powerful rather than being forced, right? And so when you're tapping into the nervous system alignment and awareness, you are not just strong, you are present, you are confident, you are energetic, right? And so your strength becomes something that flows through you, and it flows so easily rather than something you have to drag out of yourself. So rather than, if we were to bring this back to programming, rather than just adding in another session because, you know, your program says so, you notice your energy dips midweek. Therefore, you prioritize, let's say, your sleep. You do a little bit more mobility. Maybe you drop the intensity in your accessories in that session. And therefore, when you hit your main lift, you start to move with more force. It clicks better. It feels smoother than if you had just fought through exhaustion. Maybe this is things like reducing your volume slightly on back-to-back squat and bench days. And it can feel a bit counterintuitive, but actually allowing your CNS to recover enough will allow you to then hit those heavier lifts, well, those heavier sessions, right? We are training smarter again. And the third thing here is your identity alignment. Actually allowing and owning your strength to be part of who you are. Now, research shows that performance will improve when your actions align with your self-identity. So, you know, believing that I am a strong, I am a capable lifter will literally prime your brain for confidence. It will prime it for, you know, persistence, for resilience. And so before your heavy lifts, this is why we will do so much work on your identity in my one-to-one spaces, in courses that I have, magnetic mindset I mentioned in the last video. I will also post the link in the description of the video. All you need to do is scroll down, and I'm literally teaching you in 10 whole days how you can build this magnetic mindset. And such a huge chunk of what I do, what I teach, what I preach is around your identity, and for good fucking reason, okay? Because when you focus on embodiment and in who you are, it will literally follow through into everything you do. Research shows it, right? You are priming your brain for the things that you are telling it. And this is why it can also work in the opposite way. When we are letting our limiting beliefs, our negative thoughts, negative patterns run the show, guess what starts to happen? You act in alignment with those things, and it brings more of those things into your reality. And so we can use this to our advantage when we are embodying and focusing on who we need to be to hit the 400 kilo total, to hit this, to lift this. That's when you start to actually bring it into your reality, because you're still doing the things. This is still strategic. We are just changing the lens and the framing of it, right? So even just down to things like your posture, your breathing, your mental framing, they are all signals that you belong at this intensity, and your results will start to reflect that. The heavier the weight, the more important that identity becomes. And this is where like training like a female, like a woman matters, because you can be assertive, even dominant, even aggressive if you want to be in your lifting, but while staying fully fucking grounded in your femininity, right? And this is the alignment. This is what allows you to feel so strong without needing to suppress your natural expression. When we are the identity of the woman, of the lifter that you want to be, lifting becomes an extension of yourself, right? So this could be something as simple as literally standing at the bar, visualizing the version of you who has been fucking like blowing it up. And you start lifting with the authority, the self-assurance, rather than just raw force for the sake of chasing numbers, because you are bringing yourself into the picture. And so strength becomes a statement of who you are rather than just what you can do. And I love this as an approach. I could honestly talk about identity all fucking day, but this is such an important part of the puzzle. And the fourth thing is the integration, right? The force plus the energy plus the identity. This is then the expressed strength. And so we want to recognize that progress is not just about constant pushing. We have gone into that in this episode, okay? It is about a strategic expression of force through energy management and identity embodiment. So we apply the force in the moments that matter, but we regulate your nervous system to allow your body to express it fully, and we step into the lifter, the identity of that lifter, grounded in femininity and confidence. That is literally the power equation, right? And what happens is that we start lifting in a way that makes us feel so powerful and aligned. The progress becomes consistent because we aren't, pushing to the point of burnout, and we have a sense of embodiment that makes strength feel like a natural part of who you are. It makes it feel safe again, and this is what makes it sustainable. You are not just building muscle, you are literally cultivating a presence, a confidence, a way of being, and a way of being strong that is so effortless. It's magnetic, and it becomes authentic, and therefore auto-fucking-matic. And this, the feminine psychology to training aspect is where people miss the mark, because you can push hard and be fully embodied as the female fucking powerhouse that you are. It is simply about owning your identity as a powerhouse lifter. It's about channeling that aggression if it's something that is important to you, and the drive in a strategic way, and staying connected to your body, to your energy, so that the effort feels like flow rather than friction, so that it feels magnetic rather than something you are trying to force. And when you integrate the feminine psychology into your training, your lifts don't just get heavier. The total doesn't just grow and get bigger. They also feel easier at the same time, almost too easy. And you feel more confident, you feel more aligned, you are not grinding through the session, you are moving it through it as the strongest, most powerful powerhouse version of yourself. And this is the intersection of force, of nervous system awareness, of identity alignment. And this is where we skip the burnout. We feel so empowered. We feel so fucking good without losing the femininity, right? I mean, imagine walking into a session knowing that your energy, your body, your identity are all aligned, that you are pushing where it counts, you are recovering where it counts, and therefore every single lift feels so fucking good and easy. Not in the way that it's going to fly like an RBE5 no matter what's on the bar. Of course, that's not always going to be the case, but simply knowing that it's because of you being a motherfucking magnet, because of who you are and how you're showing up, right? And this is the difference between just grinding in this masculine way blindly versus training with magnetic power. And so, if this episode, this video has resonated with you and you want to go deeper, this is a topic that fucking fascinates me and I utterly adore it. And this is exactly what I have been working on myself in my own training. It's what I do and I focus on in my one-to-one coaching as well. And in this space, we dive into this full combination. We look at the strength, the identity, the energy, the mindset, the program, the feminine psychology, everything that allows it to all come together to allow you to be the motherfucking powerhouse that magnetizes the total of her dreams, the next plate on her bar, and builds the life that actually supports that, where everything happens in a way that just makes sense for you so that you can step into your full power, lift with so much confidence it feels illegal and become your absolute strongest self without the overwhelm, without the overthinking, without the burnout, and in a way that feels so freeing. And if this feels like the space that you need to be in, I am also going to post the link to the waiting list for my one-to-one. But if you're like, I need to be in this now, you can simply message me the word revolution to join the Strength Revolution, which is my high-touch one-to-one private coaching container. And you can just DM me on Instagram. I will also put the link in the bio, but my Instagram @ is bethfit.uk. Because if this is your calling, if you're like, this is the work that I need to be doing, we literally combine the strategy, the programming, the technique, everything that makes you the strong lifter, but we do it in this way where everything just flows with ease. And I'm going to teach you fucking everything. I'm so excited. If this is your jam, if this is like really what speaks to you and feels like you, I would love to work with you and I would love to hear from you. But regardless, if you have loved this video, this episode, share it with your friends, share it around, give it a like, and make sure to subscribe for more content like this. I thank you so, so much for watching this all the way through. I hope it has been so helpful and so incredible for you because this is such an important topic. I really hope that you have loved, and I will see you in the next episode.